Imagine waking up behind bars, but not just any prison, a prison built for men. Now imagine you're a woman, wrongly accused, wrongly sentenced, and dropped into a brutal world where survival is a daily battle. But here's what they didn't know. She wasn't ordinary. She had secrets. The clank of metal doors echoed through the cold halls of Cafford State Penitentiary. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the sound of scraping trays and whispered secrets traveling from cell to cell. Inside, it was like a forgotten war zone, convicts hardened by years of violence, survival and broken dreams. But none of them expected her. Layla Green had been wrongfully convicted of a crime she didn't commit. The court trial was a mockery. Her defense barely put up a fight, and the jury barely looked her way. Layla's reputation at Cafford State Prison spread faster than she anticipated. At first, it started with the whispers, the kind of whispers that followed her from the dining hall to the yard. There were murmurs about how she stood up to the gang members in the cafeteria, how she didn't back down when a group of inmates tried to intimidate her. But that wasn't the whole story. The real reason they whispered? Because Layla wasn't like the other women they'd seen before in this prison. She wasn't a victim. She didn't tremble at the sound of boots or the clang of metal. She had the look of someone who had survived much worse and was ready for whatever came next. A few days after her conversation with Jackson, Layla was sitting in the small yard, watching the men play basketball from a distance. Her eyes scanned the surroundings, noting every possible escape route, every guard's shift, every silent signal exchanged among the prisoners. "You're good," Jackson said, sitting down beside her, his voice low. "I told you, you've got the instincts of someone who's been through hell." "I've been through worse," she replied, her gaze never leaving the basketball court. Jackson smirked. "Yeah, you've got that military edge. I can see it. You've got something else, though, something people are going to notice." Layla turned toward him. "Like what?" "Don't play dumb. You've got the kind of calm that makes people think twice before messing with you. That's a power in here. You've got connections, don't you?" "I'm not here to make friends, Jackson." "Hell no, you're not," he agreed, his smile widening. "But that's not what I mean. You know the old way of surviving." Nightfall in Cafford State Prison was a different kind of terror. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was charged, heavy, the kind that crawled across your skin. The lights flickered in the hallway outside Layla's cell, casting long, creeping shadows on the wall. She lay on the top bunk, her eyes open, alert. Sleep was a luxury she no longer entertained. Tank's warning still echoed in her mind, not out of fear but calculation. She dealt with men like him in war zones, men who thrived off intimidation and chaos, but prison politics required a different strategy, and she had one. Suddenly, a low whistle floated through the hallway. 2 long notes. A code. Layla sat up. That was Jackson's signal. Seconds later, her cell door creaked open. She had picked the lock with a metal sliver she'd hidden in the sole of her prison boots, an old trick she'd learned back in a covert unit overseas. Layla moved fast and quiet, navigating the hallway like it was second nature. In the shadows near the stairwell, Jackson waited. "You're crazy," he whispered. "You called me. I said we'd talk in the yard tomorrow, not sneak around like this," he muttered. "I have no time." "What's the next move?" she asked, folding her arms. Jackson looked at her, then around. "Tank's planning something. He's gathering men. I think it's you he's targeting." "I figured. But this isn't just a warning fight. He's going to try to take you out completely, maybe make it look like a yard accident." Layla didn't flinch. "I need to hit back before he gets the chance." "You got a death wish?" "No," she said. "I have a plan." By morning, the yard buzzed with tension. Tank stood on the far side, surrounded by his men, 6 of them, big, tattooed, and laughing like they had nothing to worry about. Layla knew better. This was the quiet before a storm, and she wasn't about to be caught in it without backup. She made her way toward the far side of the yard, where a wiry young inmate named Nate stood smoking. Nate was the quiet eyes and ears of the prison. He kept to himself, worked in the kitchen, and had a memory sharp enough to recall every conversation within earshot. "Nate," Layla said calmly, "you got heat around you," he said without turning. "I ain't part of that drama." "I'm not asking for trouble," she replied. "I'm offering you something else." He finally looked at her. "Like what?" "Protection. When this goes down, Tank won't stop at me. He'll take out anyone who stood near me, including kitchen crew." Nate hesitated. "Or," Layla added, "you can make a choice now. Stand with me and ensure when things change, you don't get caught in the rubble." He flicked his cigarette to the ground. "What do you need?" "Access to the laundry room, and 5 minutes before the second shift comes in." He nodded slowly. "You're planning a hit." "I'm planning a message," Layla said. Reader on that day, inside the prison laundry room, Layla waited. The machines roared with noise, steam fogging up the air. Her fists were wrapped in cloth ripped from the hem of her uniform. Her mind was steady. No shaking, no fear. This was war, and war was her element. Tank came in with 2 of his men. "You think you're some kind of queen around here," he growled, slamming the door behind him. "No," Layla said. "I think you've been king for too long." Tank charged. The first punch came fast, wild, but she ducked. Years of combat reflexes kicked in. She spun low, grabbed his arm, and flipped him hard onto his back. His 2 men lunged. She kicked one square in the ribs, the other in the knee. It was brutal. A mop handle snapped across Tank's jaw. Layla's fists connected again and again. Precise, controlled. Blood smeared across the tile. When it was done, Tank was groaning on the ground. But she didn't finish him. Instead, she leaned down. "You wanted to be king. Now you can explain to everyone how a woman beat you without even breaking a sweat." Then she walked out. By the time evening fell, the entire prison knew what happened. Tank didn't come out for roll call. His boys were scattered. The power in the yard shifted. Layla didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She was calculating her next move, and she knew the real fight hadn't even started yet, because someone bigger than Tank was watching. The guards had been silent since the fight, too silent. Layla had seen the way Officer Brandt, the one with the twisted smirk, watched her through the bars like a man studying a threat. He wasn't just a racist cop with power. He was connected to something deeper, something hidden. That night, her cell door clicked again. It wasn't Jackson, it was Brandt. "You think you're clever," he said, stepping in with his baton tapping against his thigh. "You embarrassed the wrong people." Layla stood. "I know what you did before you got locked up," Brandt hissed. "I've seen your records, and I know why they sealed them." Layla's eyes narrowed. "Then you should also know I'm not the one to mess with," he chuckled. "I like your fire, but you're not in control. You're a ghost in here. No identity, no rights. If I wanted to make you disappear, I could do it before breakfast. You're not the first to threaten me." Brandt stepped closer. "I won't need to threaten you next time." And then, just as suddenly, he was gone. Door slammed, locked. But Layla's heart wasn't racing. She knew Brandt had just confirmed what she suspected. There was a reason she was sent to this men's prison. It wasn't a clerical error. It was planned. Someone wanted her buried. Now, she had a new mission, and it would shake this prison to the core. The sky above Cafford State turned iron gray. Rain hit the concrete yard like the ticking of a time bomb. Layla stood by the window of her cell, fists clenched, mind racing. What Brandt said last night confirmed everything. She wasn't here by accident. She was placed here, buried, and someone out there was terrified of what she knew. The scars on her body, the burn marks on her wrists, they weren't from prison. They were reminders of something darker, a covert mission gone wrong, one that had vanished from records. But she hadn't. They thought putting her behind bars would silence her. They were wrong. By midday, whispers spread. Tank's fall shifted the prison's balance. Inmates who had once walked with swagger now kept their heads down. Jackson had taken control of the South Block, and though he never said it, everyone knew Layla's name had weight now. But Brandt was still watching. Every roll call, every meal line. His cold blue eyes never left her. Layla started watching back. She noticed a pattern. Every Thursday, Brandt disappeared for an hour. Always after lights out. Always before midnight. No record of it, no shift change, and every time he returned he looked different, more shaken. Sometimes there were bloodstains barely visible on his sleeves. Other times, his face carried the shadow of something he couldn't scrub clean. Whatever Brandt was doing, it wasn't routine. Layla needed proof. That Thursday she didn't sleep. When the hallway darkened and the low hum of snoring filled the block, she slid off the top bunk and tapped twice on her wall. Jackson tapped back. One knock. Ready. She slid a sharpened toothbrush, her backup weapon, into her waistband, then reached beneath the mattress to pull out a makeshift mirror. She angled it out through the bars, watching. Brandt passed, keys jingling, boots echoing, no clipboard, no flashlight. Layla moved. She slipped out using the same trick she'd perfected. A hairpin twisted from wire, shaped to the lock. Every second felt like a heartbeat. Jackson met her near the stairwell. "You sure about this?" "Positive." They followed the shadows. Quiet. Swift. Brandt didn't head toward the control room. He took the underground passage beneath the east wing, an old maintenance tunnel long forgotten by most inmates. Except Layla had seen the blueprints on her first week, memorized them. They moved slowly, avoiding cameras. Jackson held a crowbar just in case. At the far end of the passage they stopped. A dim light flickered above an old steel door. Brandt disappeared through it. Layla moved closer. She pressed her ear to the wall. Screams. Low, muffled, but definitely screams. Jackson's jaw tensed. What the hell is this? She didn't answer. They waited. 20 minutes later, Brant came out, dragging something, or someone. A man in an orange jumpsuit, bloodied, barely breathing. Layla's stomach turned. This wasn't just sadism. This was organized torture. They returned to their cells in silence. Jackson collapsed on his bunk. Layla sat at the edge of hers, mind whirling. The pieces were falling into place. Brant wasn't just a violent racist cop. He was part of something bigger, a hidden operation. Layla had seen this before, in a black site overseas. Detainees disappearing, information being extracted, people being reprocessed. But that was war. This was a U.S. prison. Something was very, very wrong. The next morning, everything felt colder. During breakfast, Brant walked by her table. He didn't say a word, just dropped something beside her tray. A single photo of the inmate from last night, dead. Layla didn't blink. She picked up the photo, studied it, then placed it under her cup. You're slipping, Brant, she said quietly. His jaw tightened. So are you. Then he walked off. Jackson leaned in. He's warning you. He's threatening me, she corrected. Which means we're getting close. Close to what? To exposing whatever hell is buried under this prison. Later that day in the library, Layla made contact. There was only one person who could help her now. Devin Rains. Once her commanding officer, now a whistleblower in hiding. She hadn't spoken to him in years. Not since the mission in Kandahar where they lost 4 men to bad intel. She scribbled a coded note on the back of a book cover and handed it to Nate, who had access to the mailroom. Deliver this. No detours. Nate nodded. If they catch me, they won't. He disappeared. Now it was a waiting game. Days passed. Brant grew more agitated. Inmates were questioned. Cells were searched. But Layla kept her cool. Until Sunday morning. She woke to find her bunkmate gone. Her mattress sliced open, and a single message scrawled in red on the wall. You're next. That afternoon, during recreation, she saw it. A guard had slipped something into Brant's hand. A syringe. He was planning to end her. Quietly. Layla moved fast. She crossed the yard in seconds, just as Brant approached her with fake calm. She didn't wait for him to speak. She punched him hard across the face. Chaos exploded. Guards surged forward. Inmates screamed. Brant tackled her. The syringe hit the ground and rolled. She flipped him, kneed him in the ribs. The syringe skidded toward Jackson, who quickly scooped it up. Before backup arrived, Brant screamed. She attacked me. She's crazy. Layla stood tall. You were going to inject me. Ask the cameras. Brant's eyes widened. He had forgotten the new security upgrades. That night, she was thrown into solitary. 4 gray walls. No window. No clock. No noise, except her heartbeat. But Layla wasn't afraid. Because in the darkness, a smile crept across her face. She had what she needed now. Evidence. Witnesses. And if Devin got her message, everything would soon explode. The walls of solitary confinement had no mercy. But Layla had never needed mercy. She needed clarity. And she got it. On the 4th day of darkness, her cell door creaked open. A blinding light flooded in. 2 guards stepped inside, not with tasers or shackles, but with a single sentence that hit harder than any blow. You've got a visitor, Federal. Her eyes narrowed. Federal who? Didn't give a name, but they got full clearance. Warden's orders. Warden's orders. That meant someone way up had leaned on him. She felt it in her bones. Devin had received her message. She stood slowly, stretched her shoulders, and followed them out. They led her not to the main visitation hall, but to a small private room with surveillance cameras disabled. Inside stood a man in a sleek navy suit with sharp eyes and a face that screamed control, but Layla recognized him instantly. Devin, she said, almost in disbelief. He looked older, rougher, but that same fire still burned behind his gaze. I told you I'd always have your back, he said, even if the whole system tried to erase you. Layla let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Why now, she asked. He pulled out a file and placed it gently on the table. Because what you found here, Brant, the underground operation, the torture chambers, it links directly to a classified government contract, one that was supposed to be shut down 10 years ago. Someone kept it alive here. Layla opened the folder. Photos, testimonies, surveillance logs, even a signed order with Brant's name attached to an off-the-books intelligence wing called Project Harrow. I knew it, she muttered. Devin nodded. They didn't just want you out of the military. They wanted you buried, literally. When they couldn't silence you through court-martial, they rigged a trial, falsified charges, and sent you here under a false name. This place was supposed to break you. Layla's voice was steady. They underestimated me. Outside, chaos was building. Jackson, with help from a few trusted inmates, had been planting seeds of unrest. Brant's violent legacy was being whispered from block to block. The photo Layla had kept hidden was now in the hands of a prison journalist, Marcus, a young man locked up for whistleblowing years ago. And with Devon's arrival, things were shifting faster than anyone expected. By the time Layla stepped back into general population, the air felt different, thicker, louder, electric. It was lunchtime when it happened. Brant, furious and erratic, stormed into the cafeteria. His eyes darted from table to table, looking for Layla. She stood calmly at the back wall, arms folded. "I'm done playing games," Brant shouted, drawing his baton and yanking Marcus from his seat. The entire room froze. "Where's the damn photo?" Brant roared. "You think you can take me down with a picture? You think people care what happens to scum like you?" Layla stepped forward. "Let him go, Brant." He spun, eyes bloodshot. "You should be dead." Then, without warning, he lunged, but Layla had already moved. She grabbed a tray, blocked the baton, swept his legs with a stool, and disarmed him mid-fall. In less than 4 seconds, Brant was on his back, wheezing, defeated. But Layla didn't move to hit him. Instead, she turned to the security cameras. "Are they recording this?" The warden's voice boomed over the intercom from the control tower. "Yes, they are. Every second." That's when the doors burst open. Federal agents, cameras, Devon, journalists, and a familiar face, Senator Lila Morgan. The next 30 minutes were a blur of handcuffs, confessions, legal orders, and a storm of media flashbulbs. Brant was arrested on the spot. The warden was taken into custody for obstruction and conspiracy. And Layla? Layla stood in the middle of it all, unshaken. Senator Morgan walked up to her, hand extended. "You're the reason this place is coming down. You exposed a nightmare." Layla shook her hand. "I just survived it." 3 weeks later, Cafford State was shut down pending federal investigation. Over 60 inmates were released after false convictions were overturned. Devon stood by Layla's side as she faced a press conference, her face finally shown to the world not as a prisoner, but as a hero. "Miss Callahan," a reporter asked, "what now?" Layla looked out at the cameras, then at the thousands watching live. "I rebuild, I fight back the right way, and I make sure no other black woman, no other innocent person, ends up buried just because someone was afraid of their truth." Cheers erupted, but Layla wasn't done. Back home, her mother waited on the porch with open arms. She held her tight, whispers of apology, of pride, and for the first time in years, Layla let herself cry. Not from pain, but from freedom, because no one saw it coming, that the woman they buried would rise and bring the whole system down.